Good evening and welcome. This is a special moment, and I wanted to be here to share in this special moment with you as we welcome Heather Monroe as our first ever guest. We're calling Heather our first ever resident faculty member of Recovery 2.0. And what that means is that Heather is taking up residency with us, where every Tuesday night at 5 p.m. Pacific time, she will present to us for the foreseeable future. Now we get to benefit from her wisdom and her experience. I want to introduce Heather to you, but before I do so, I just want to talk a little bit more about this program. In my whole life, I encounter wonderful people, and some of those people really go into the category for me of, wow, this is an extraordinary person. This is somebody that not only I am grateful to be a colleague with, but somebody that I want to learn from, somebody who I would like to be around, somebody who carries a vibration and an energy and an attitude that is just simply uplifting because you're around it. And Heather is one of those people for me. And so the opportunity to share her and to turn you all onto her has presented itself, and I am just thrilled about it. The idea about Recovery 2.0 is to provide inspiration, information, practices, principles, a path to follow where one day at a time, each of us can reflect upon our personal experience and learn and grow. Heather's work exists at this nexus point between psychology and spirituality, I would say. I'm speaking for her, but that's what I would say. And so as we reflect upon our recovery path, our lives also touch on that point where psychology and spirituality meet. And so Heather is going to be presenting on psychology and spirituality each week with us. So what we have here is a woman with a lot of experience as a therapist, somebody who is a somatic experiencing practitioner, somebody who has studied yoga, is a certified yoga teacher. I'm very proud to say that she is a mother of 2 children whom I count myself fortunate to know. And she is the wife of a man who I sincerely love in this world, and I'm also fortunate to know. So this is a real family affair. But that has nothing actually to do with why Heather's here. My choice to have Heather here is because I know that her experience, her strength, her hope, her wisdom can benefit the people of Recovery 2.0. And so it's just such a joy and an honor to have her here and to be launching this program of resident faculty members with her. Makes a lot of sense. So she also, I want to say, has a strong practice and a real countenance of a person who has developed and is developing always a meditative mind. So without further ado, I want to welcome all of you to this session with Heather. Heather, I'm going to close the chat bar, and I suggest you do the same thing so that you don't be distracted by it.
Yeah. How do I do that?
Just click on chat and it'll close.
Okay.
And then anybody who has a question for Heather, you can drop it in the Q&A and she can go after, and she can look at those at the very end if there's time. But don't worry about that, Heather, okay? All right, so without further ado, let's all welcome lovingly and energetically, sending some love towards Heather. And yeah, so grateful you're here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the intro. I'm so excited I'm here. So I thought that we could take a moment just to ground ourselves before we get into the discussion on connection. So if everyone can just take a seat and have their feet in a comfortable position, and have your feet on the floor, or if you're going to sit Indian style, that's fine as well. And then just hands or palms on the lap. And let's just close our eyes. And if closing your eyes doesn't feel safe, then just focus on a spot on the floor and just rest your eyes there, and that's fine too. So let's just lightly close our eyes and concentrate on our breath. Noticing it as it flows in and out. Letting go of anything that happened during the day. Coming into the present moment. Feeling your feet or your sits bone on the ground. Grounding you to the earth below it. And into this moment of presence. Bring your awareness to your lungs. As they fill with air. And then release. Centering ourselves in this connection with each other. And with this time we have. Then let's take a moment to take a deep breath. And open our eyes when we're ready. Okay. Thank you so much for doing that with me. I just like to start my sessions with clients and with groups and just in general for myself with just awareness. And that's going to be a big part of the talk today. So we're talking about connection and the science of connection, but the science, what I mean by science is the biology and how we are hardwired to connect and how connection heals us and how being disconnected creates disease. So we're first going to start with how we connect, the first source of connection in our lives. And that would be with our primary caretakers. And when I say primary caretakers, I mean anyone who was the person who was taking care of you. So it could be your parents, or it could be a grandparent, whoever was really there taking care of you. So that's our first touchstone of connection in life. And our brain is actually, it's wired through relationships. It's wired, and the way that we will learn and grow and connect with ourselves and to our environment all starts with that connection, not just from after birth, but actually in utero, like inside of our mothers, inside of the belly, how our mother is feeling at the time of her pregnancy, how calm she is, how anxious she is, how her cortisol levels are, how her oxytocin is. All those things will affect the way that the baby takes in information about the environment that they are about to be brought into. So connection is an incredible part. It's an incredible part of the human experience. And what's interesting to me about connection is it's disconnection is what we have to heal from in this lifetime. And connection is the main goal, is to feel connected to ourselves, to others, to the world around us. and to something greater than ourselves. If that is your goal, but it absolutely helps in the development of a human being and a human brain to be connected to all those things. So our first connection is in the womb. It's around how the mother's feeling, what the anxiety is like, if she's eating, or if she's in an environment, a harsh environment where food isn't available readily. The fetus is going to pick up all these different nuances. So if you came into the world with a mother, let's say, who was abused, her circuitry is going to be wired around hypervigilance, meaning anxiety, always looking out, always feeling like she needs to protect herself from something. So that circuitry is going to be wired inside her and be wiring the baby that's growing inside of her too. On the other hand, if your mother was in an environment where she was safe and she felt connected to her partner and to her environment, that baby growing inside her is going to be, is going to be cued in to that feeling of safeness, of safety, and of connection, even in the womb. So, and also the brain development of that fetus is going to be developing around connection and safety, or around anxiety and lack. So all these things make a huge impact on how we're born. So after we're born, there's connection it's everything. It is the way that a baby survives in the beginning of life, is to cry. So when I say we're hardwired for connection, I mean that when we feel disconnected, our body releases hormones and our brain releases chemicals that tell us that disconnection is actually painful. It hurts, and that we need to get back to homeostasis. We need to get back to connection. Cortisol levels move up, adrenaline levels go up, and we have incredible dis-ease. On the other hand, connection in our body, when we felt as a baby, we cried, and our mother or caretaker, father, came to us and read our cue right, meaning that they knew that we were hungry, not tired, or something like that. They were able to read what our cries sounded like. So if a mother heard your cry and thought, "Ooh, my baby's hungry," and then she fed you, your body is going to release oxytocin, the bonding agent. It's going to release dopamine and serotonin. It's going to release all these chemicals and hormones that tell us as human beings that not only is connection safe, but it's sustainable. It's not too much or too little. It's this homeostasis of warmth and safety. So that's really important to know, because as a community of recovering substance users, when we get high, there's a rush of dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin, but it's not a sustainable amount. Whereas connection is all leveled out. It's this sense of, I can stay here. And that's a huge part of our healing as a community in recovery, is getting in balance with what is sustainable and what doesn't feel like sustainable connection. So if when we are children, I'm going to talk about different attachment styles, because attachment is connection. So there's actually 4 different attachment styles. There's secure attachment. That's number 1. So there's secure attachment, there's anxious attachment, there's avoidant attachment, and then there's disorganized attachment. Okay, so let's start with secure attachment. Secure attachment is if you came from a family where your needs, emotional needs, were, for the most part, okay, because we're human and we're not going to be able to show up for our children the right way in the right time, exactly how they want to every single time. But for the most part, If we showed up for our children if your parents showed up for you emotionally and you emotionally got your needs met, you are going to develop a secure attachment. And a secure attachment means a few things. It means you're not scared of intimacy. It means that you do not have a fear of abandonment. It means that you are protected and connected, meaning that I can protect myself, and if I can't, I'm going to ask for help. So there is a connection around people, but I'm able to put up boundaries. You're also going to know your worth. There is a sense of my inherent worth is no better and no less than anybody else's inherent worth. And that comes from your sense of love and safety in your family. You are also going to, if you get into a relationship and there's a red flag that somebody isn't treating you right, you are going to be able to step away from that relationship much more easily than if you had an insecure attachment. So I hope that that's clear about a secure attachment. You basically have good boundary system, a sense of self-esteem, a sense of self-worth, and not a fear of intimacy and not a fear of being abandoned. So if you came from a family where your caretakers, your mom and dad, they sometimes got it right, but sometimes didn't. They were inconsistent with the emotional support that they showed you. That could start from when you were a baby and you cried because you were hungry. And sometimes your parents would know you were hungry, but other times they would get so panicked about the crying, they might think you're tired, so they put you down to sleep. And then, you know, they think you want to play because you're not crying, because you keep crying. So then they pick you up to take you out and play. And there's just this confusion about what is going on, what is the need. Now, as you get older, there's still an inconsistency of emotional needs. So I kind of call it false advertising. Like, they'll sometimes be able to be there for you and emotionally meet you. And then other times it'll be too much. They're too overwhelmed. They're too preoccupied. And so they won't be there. So you're constantly left guessing, when's mom and dad going to show up and when aren't they? Like, so if you can think about it, there's this anxiety that starts happening. There's this anxiety around abandonment. And are they going to show up or aren't they going to show up? And so when there's an anxiety around abandonment, we usually as children buy into a few beliefs. One is, I'm too much to love, right? If I was just more blank, then I would be easier to love. So that's one. Another one would be, they just don't love me. I'm unlovable, right? And then, so let's just take those two. I'm unlovable or I'm too much to love. Buying into I'm too much to love would give you a little bit more agency, because then you can at least try and be perfect and be enough so that they won't leave, or that they'll get it right, or that they'll meet your emotional need. But you can imagine that it's not about you, it's about them. So as hard as you try, it's going to be really hard to ever feel like you are enough. So with anxious, so this would be an anxiously attached person. Now, when there's inconsistency around connection, you are going to be hyper vigilant, and you're actually going to cling to the person that's causing you pain in the hope that they'll stop causing you pain. If that resonates at all, just keep that in mind if it resonates at all, and ask questions as I can answer them later on. So you're gonna be clinging to the person that's actually causing you this distrust and this feeling of abandonment. And you can imagine how disorienting that can be. So an anxiously attached person is going to have a deep fear of abandonment. But what's interesting is that underneath that fear of abandonment is actually going to be a fear of intimacy. And what I mean by that is there's a fear of abandonment until someone shows up and doesn't abandon, right? And shows you that you're worth it, and they want to give you their heart and they want your heart. And then there's almost this like repulsion. There's this sense of, well, I don't want to be a part of any team that I'm a member of. So an anxiously attached person will present with a fear of abandonment, but really underneath that is a deep fear of intimacy, because they've never really been able to be intimate with their caretakers, their first blueprint for connection. Then the other way that a child can go is, let's say your parents they weren't inconsistent, they just were really emotionally unaware and never really got it right. So they never really showed up for you emotionally. There was a consistent avoidance of emotions in your family, that there was a sense of emotions weren't welcome and no one knew how to deal with emotions, so we just kind of avoided them. So this child is going to grow up being almost giving up that their emotional needs are going to be met. And when a child gives up that their emotional needs are going to be met, they become almost an island onto themselves. So an avoidant attachment style is going to be highly independent. They are going to be walled off, meaning that they are protected, but they're not connected. Oh, side note, an anxiously attached person is going to be connected, but not protected. So they're going to crave intimacy from someone, and they're going to confuse connection with intensity, right? So an anxiously attached person is going to confuse intimacy with intensity. They're going to think that intensity is intimacy, but it's not. An avoidantly attached person is going to be walled off. They're going to be boundary full. They are going to be protected from other people and other people's thoughts and ideas and other people's behaviors, but they are going to not be connected. That there's going to be a sense of loneliness around an avoidantly attached person. Now, what is so sad, I can't think of another word for it, but I have so much compassion, and what strikes me as so sad around avoidantly attached people is because we are hardwired for connection, because it's so vital to our quality of life. When we are avoidant, we're barely living. There's a sense of numbness there, and there's a deep sense of loneliness. So there is a true desire to be connected to people and to have intimacy. But the thought of intimacy, when it comes too close, feels smothering, like it's choking you, and it makes you feel and people's needs make you feel resentful. So an avoidantly attached person is going to be walled off, protected, but not connected. They are going to have a hard time empathizing with other people sometimes, because they don't let themselves feel what other people, how things might feel to other people. And they're going to feel a sense of loneliness. An avoidantly attached person is going to, so they're going to present with a fear of intimacy, just like the anxiously attached person presented with a fear of abandonment. An avoidantly attached person is going to present with the fear of intimacy. But underneath that fear of intimacy is actually a deep fear of abandonment. Because what if I finally let someone in? What if I finally let someone in the way that I let my caretakers in when I was young? Then they'll abandon me. So there is a desperation around avoidantly attached people to not get close, because of that deeper fear of abandonment. Does that make sense? So the last attachment style, insecure attachment style, is disorganized. So this attachment style is when your parents, the people that are supposed to protect you and keep you safe, they're also the ones that are causing you terror. So this happens in families where there's been abuse, emotional, physical, sexual. It's also where there's substance use disorders. So you never know what mood, what kind of dad you're going to get. Is it going to be the rageaholic, or is it going to be the happy drunk? Same with mom. So there's a real sense of the parent causes fear in the child, and then the child has no way of no way of protection. She has no one to, they have no one to protect them. So avoidant and anxiously attached people, they're organized in their dysfunction to a certain extent. Like anxiously attached person is going to cling to the person that is hurting them. There's going to be a real fear of abandonment. There's going to be a submissiveness. There's going to be changing ourselves in order to make someone stay with us. An avoidantly attached person, there's going to be an independence there, a walled offness. There's going to be resentment around needs. But it's pretty predictable. Disorganized attachment, when you grew up in a family, in a house of terror to a certain extent, when there was, it oscillated between terror and safety, happy drunk and rageful drunk, that kind of just total dysfunction, that this person, we are going to grow up to be completely disorganized in our attachment or connection style. There's going to be a push-pull. So 1 second you could be submissive, the next second you could be aggressive. 1 second you could be avoidant, the next second you're anxious. There's no rhyme or reason to it because there's so much trauma. There's so much disorganized trauma. There's so much reaction. So you are always in a disorganized trauma reaction, meaning someone could trigger you and your avoidant comes out, and someone could trigger you and your anxious comes out, and there's no way of knowing when that's going to happen or how that's going to happen. So there is this concept of codependency in the recovery world. And it's really seen as a bad thing. And I am going to actually say the opposite. We are hardwired as the animals that we are, as humans. We are hardwired for dependency. Dependency actually creates courage and bravery. When our emotional needs are met, we then look outward. So first, our instinct as humans is to look inward to see if our emotional needs are met, and then we can look outwards and to the outside world and be brave and courageous and explore. So commitment and connection and attachment actually means freedom. A person that is securely attached is more free than a person who is not securely attached. So how do we heal attachment? Right now that I've triggered everybody, including myself, about all the different ways that our needs weren't met as children. So what's so great and what's so hopeful is that the science now shows that our personalities are not set in stone. Our brains are not set in stone. As a matter of fact, we used to think that the brain stopped developing around 26 years old. But now we know that it never stops developing, that we can put down new neural pathways in our circuitry at any age. So if you self-identify as anxiously attached or avoidantly attached or disorganizedly attached, there is nothing in your biology and in your brain that will hinder you from healing and creating a secure attachment. So I see clients all the time, from teens to 70-year-olds, completely change the way that they connect with the world and with themselves through their own healing of attachment. So again, so what does this mean? So let's look at codependency and dependency. With healing, that means that healing begins with healthy dependency on each other and on ourselves. So there's this sense that if you are healthily, if you are attached to someone in a healthy way and you are not codependent, that means that you are responsible for your feelings, and that other person, your partner, is responsible for their feelings. And if your partner does something that, if your partner does something or behaves a certain way, you aren't supposed to be affected by that person. You are supposed to just, stay the course and know that that person is not you and you are not that person. And that is a healthy relationship. Well, what the science is showing now is that we actually, when we connect and when we attach to someone else, that person, we become a physiological unit to each other, which means that we help regulate each other's breath, each other's heart rate, each other's blood pressure. That research has shown, there was research done around women that were told that signed up for a study, and they got hooked up to a functional MRI, an fMRI. Their brain got hooked up, and they were in a waiting room, and they were exposed to stress. And the stress was, you are going to be given a little bit of an electric shock. The women that were told this in the waiting room, that were by themselves, their cortisol levels rose significantly. Other women were put in a waiting room, told the same thing, but while they held a stranger's hand, their cortisol levels did not rise as much as the women who had no one to hold hands with. The women who were married or who had a partner were holding the partner's hand or husband's hand while they were told that they were going to be shocked, had almost no significant cortisol level rise. Just to show again that our dependency on the person we attach with actually helps us be brave. It helps us deal with outside stressors. So the myth about codependency is one that we've bought into, especially in the recovery community. And I do think that it has a place when dealing with active addiction, but even some of the research there is showing that we don't need to disconnect and be able and say, we want nothing to do with you until you get clean. There's actually more science now that shows that setting boundaries, but always trying not to disconnect from the heart and trying to stay connected to your loved one who's suffering with addiction, is actually beginning to be proven to be more effective in getting that person into treatment. There's a wonderful book called Beyond Addiction, The Science of Kindness and How It Heals Families. If you are struggling with someone who has an addiction issue, I would highly suggest that you get that book, because it talks about connection and how it actually helps us heal. So just a thought on addiction and around connection. I believe that as people in recovery from substance use disorders, including myself, I know that in my own experience with addiction, all I wanted was to feel connected. I remember the first time I tried my drug of choice, and this rush of warmth and connection came over me. And I thought to myself at the tender age of 13, why would I ever go back? This is what I've been longing for my whole life. All of a sudden, I was lovable. I was smart enough. I didn't need anybody. I was independent. I felt confident, all these things. So substances work to to make us feel connected until they don't, until they actually work then to disconnect us. I always look at, I always tell my clients who struggle with substance use disorder, if you were drowning and someone handed you a life vest, wouldn't you put it on? Absolutely, right? And so drugs or alcohol were our life vest for connection. They were our life vest for a long time, and they worked. But after years of wear and tear in the ocean, the life vest starts getting holes and it starts taking on water. And the thing that saved us, that actually saved us for many years, starts drowning us and it starts pulling us under. So we have to take this life vest off. The issue is we still don't know how to swim. And recovery is all about learning how to swim. It's learning how to reconnect. It's learning how to connect authentically for the first time, maybe, with ourselves and with each other. And so I just say that to commend all of you that are on this path, and that these are what Tommy does and what you're doing in your own life, the communities that you're building. It's all rewiring and reprogramming your brain towards connection. So I just want to tell you that the whole path of recovery is around rewiring and reconnecting our brain, healing those insecure attachment wounds and those insecure attachment styles, and creating more secure attachments. And there's real science about how we can do this. So the number one way that we reattach securely is by our relationships, not with our parents anymore. That, to a certain extent, you know, when we go home, we're incredibly triggered and all that because we're back in the belly of the beast. And to start with that relationship is incredibly overwhelming, and I would never recommend it to anybody ever. You want to start in your relationship with friends, maybe a partner, but part of the healing process around healing from disconnection, which is what you have when you have an attachment when you have an insecure attachment disorder. So part of healing is, number one, awareness. So what do I have? Am I terrified of abandonment, or am I terrified of intimacy? Or am I both? Am I just all over the place in my terror and my security and my avoidance and my anxiety? Once we have that awareness, we start to begin to look for the triggers of when our avoidance is triggered and when our anxiety is triggered. Now, this is where codependency creeps in, that whole, the whole discussion around codependency. Just want to see how much time I have left. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, we're good on time, actually. So the codependency creeps in when in our, let's take anxiety. In our anxiety, so as a recovering, anxiously attached human being, when I start feeling that deep fear of abandonment and it bubbles up inside of me, and all I want to do is turn to my husband and say to him, tell me you'll never leave me. Tell me that we'll be together forever, no matter how bad it gets. You're never going to leave me, and I'm never going to be alone, and I'm not going to die alone, and it's and all this crazy stuff. Whenever I want to do that, I actually tend to that part in myself. So one, I'm aware that I'm feeling that way. That's number one. Two is recognizing that he is not the solution. He is actually not the solution to the problem. So what is the problem? The problem is that I'm activated right now and I'm having a deep fear of abandonment. So what I do is one of two things. What I did in my early recovery is I would call a friend, a mentor of mine, a sibling, somebody to talk the fear through with. So someone I trust that I can talk the fear through with. A therapist. I talk to my therapist a lot about this. So a lot of it was processing the actual fear, not through the person that's triggering it, and not through the person I think has the answer, but through an outside source that doesn't trigger that abandonment in me. Does that make sense? So I wouldn't be processing this with my parents. I wouldn't be processing this with my husband. Anyone who triggers it, I'm going to not process it with them. Then it becomes internalized enough after you process it outside of the relationship that you begin to bring in your functional adult. So what I mean by that is when you feel secure, when you feel whole and secure, there is a sense of knowing that I've got me. No matter what, I'm never going to be alone because I've got that part of me that fears the loneliness, right? So that is the last part, that is a more sophisticated part of healing. So you first go to the other people that create the functional adult. They create the model of what you would say to yourself, the things that your friends or therapist or confidant would say to you that you would internalize. So it's all about, again, building the connection with other people, that then it becomes an internal connection. So just like the disconnection started with other people, the connection starts with other people too, by being vulnerable and saying that we're afraid. We're afraid that someone's going to leave us. Once we internalize those voices, we begin to start saying that to ourselves. So now, because I've been doing this for so long, when that fear crops up in me, I am able to soothe and regulate my own nervous system by saying, you're going to be okay. I've got you. Let's drop into the present moment right here and right now. Is there any fear around abandonment? And I can recheck myself and reframe myself. So the connection to other people, sorry, I just reminded you of a question. Okay, great. So my connection to other people becomes my connection to myself, which then heals the wound of being abandoned. So I know I've got lots of questions in the Q&A, so let me start to get to those, okay? Okay, so hi, Heather. By what age is the attachment style set of the four? Well, that's what I'm saying, is that it's set, but it's never set. So, for instance, you might have had an insecure attachment style growing up, but then through life experiences, and let's say you had a really strong mother figure in your life who stepped in your teens and was able to create more of a secure attachment, that person is actually going to change the way that it's going to change your attachment style. So for instance, I was anxiously attached, and then my sponsor became a huge securely attached, a huge attachment figure to me. From a mother instinct. And then I was able, through her, to have a different blueprint of what a secure attachment looks like. So our attachment styles, we might lean towards them or we might be set in them, but you can always change them through connections with other people. How can a parent that was not able to provide the emotional needs both while pregnant and during the early years deal with the guilt of harming the child? Okay. We as parents are doing the absolute best we can. And just as there is generational trauma, there's also generational healing. So every generation actually creates a healing lineage just as much as it carries on generational trauma. So let's say you weren't able to provide the emotional needs when you were pregnant or during early childhood. I will bet that there were protective factors that you did provide during that childhood. And I would also say that in order to move through and create a different attachment style with your child now, you first have to not come from a place of guilt. You have to get to that forgiveness through your own therapy. Because when we operate from a place of guilt as a parent, we tend to overcompensate. And that is not going to lead to a secure attachment either with a child, right? It's going to lead to all other sorts of issues. Is it possible to be a combo of avoidant, anxiously, and disorganized? Yeah, it is. And I would say, though, if you're a combo, you probably tend towards disorganized attachment. If you're a combination of avoidant and anxious. Hi, I was adopted. I relate to avoidant completely. Can you go into what you mean by having resentment around needs and avoidant attachment? Okay, so guys, I'm so excited I'm doing this weekly with you because I get to talk about, I can talk to you guys about love addiction, for lack of a better word, or dysfunctional connection between partners. I can do a talk around that if you guys want me to. And that I will go through the dance that happens with an avoidantly attached person in a relationship and an anxiously attached person in a relationship, what that dance looks like, because it's very specific. So it's hard for me to go into it now, but I can do a whole talk around that if you want me to. Can you please recommend books that talk more about attachment styles? The best one I have come across is Attached. It's just called Attached. And it is actually, I have it right here. Yeah, it's Attached. The New Science of Adult Attachment and How It Can Help You Find and Keep Love. This is such a great book. It really breaks it down in very simple format. Can parents be the ones to nurture attachment healing, even if they cause the initial insecurity? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, parents are going to mess up all the time. We aren't going to do this perfectly. Life is messy, and we are the blueprint. A lot of the time, I think childhood is the blueprint of what we need to learn in life and what we need to heal from. So there's no sense of dwelling on how you messed up as a parent. It's also about how we heal that. So part of attachment repair is what it's called, is that when we mess up and when we lose our cool, or when we dismiss their feelings and are emotionally cold, or when we hold our emotions as a consequence, we validate their reality by explaining, listen, I know I just lost my temper with you, and I raised my voice, and that's not okay. So it's validating the child's reality. It's practicing repair, which is, I'm sorry, that's not okay. So apologizing. And right there, you're actually, and connecting on a heartfelt level. So really making the apology sincere, and I'm going to try better next time. That's showing the child that we all mess up. It's mirroring important language around conflict resolution. And it's also teaching the child that you're human, and it's messy, and it's okay. And because there's authentic connection, that attachment wound has actually been healed right there. So there's a whole therapy called attachment-based family therapy that I've been trained in, that's evidence-based, and I use it with teens and their parents. And it is amazing, the healing that goes on in an 8-week period, just by the parent connecting, hearing how they messed up, not interrupting, and then apologizing for it in a real, authentic, coached way that they need coaching around. Wondering how frequency of addiction intersects with this approach. Yeah, so intersects with what approach? I would need more information, but I would just need more information around that. What's the name of the book Heather mentioned? Attached. Uh, so I'm early in my recovery again after relapse. That's totally okay. Good thing. I'm happy you're here. I've had 2 10-month periods of sexual anorexia, and I struggle to find a healthy relationship to physical connection. I'm filled with fear that when I have physical relationships, I'll relapse. I'm assuming I'm anxious attachment, a deep fear of intimacy. Would you agree with that? Okay, so it looks like I actually that talk that I have on love addiction might be really helpful for you guys. Um, as we know, one of the biggest triggers in early recovery around relapse is relationships. It is connection. It's not connection. It's intensity. It's mistaking intensity for connection, which we do as people in early recovery, and not even in early recovery. What I can see continue to go on for decades. Just kind of swapping one intense experience like a drug or drink for another, which is relationship to a relationship. So I can do a talk about that and give you guys a lot more information on that. What if you don't have an outside source to share with? If you don't have an outside source to share with, you need to find one. And this is a wonderful, wonderful community of people that can be that source for you. I know that Tommy does Recovery 2.0 meetings. And so there's all different ways that we can connect, even through pandemic. But to find, we cannot do this on our own. We know that, right? We've so very much tried earnestly so many times to just get through it and do life on our own. That's not how we're programmed. I would say also that an avoidantly attached person who is highly independent and in kind of that just barely living thing, it's going to be really hard for us to be vulnerable. And that is what intimacy demands, is vulnerability. So I would challenge you gently and kindly to seek out help from your peers and find a source with which you can share this. Is it possible that for survival, a person has pushed their fears of abandonment down so deep and instead built a wall of strength around them, but at a cost? The cost could be depression, loneliness, a sense of not fully living. How do you get in touch with that, with the authentic feelings? Oh, June, such a great question. There is always a benefit, right, to avoidance or to anxiety or to anxious attachment. We wouldn't be doing what we do and continue to do it if there wasn't any upside to it. So avoidantly attached people, they have a lot of accolades, a lot of strengths, an island onto themselves. They don't have to worry about anybody else. They're very boundaried, very protective. They tend to have a self-esteem of greater than, unless they mess up. So you get in touch with the authentic feeling through vulnerability, through, so again, if you found, so this can be through therapy, this can be through finding a yoga teacher that you really connect with, but getting in touch with that vulnerability that we all have inside, that need for connection, and working with someone to dismantle the resistance. So first we need to understand what resistance around intimacy feels like in our body for the avoidantly attached person. What does that feel like? A lot of the times it feels like a choking. It feels like get away from me. It comes out as anger and annoyance. And it's working with that resistance and talking about it and bringing awareness to it, which is why yoga and meditation are so key to healing, that actually breaks it up. If we don't resist it and we just let it come to us, then we can feel it more. Can we access this and share it with friends in our other recovery communities and families, a format that is easy to share via phone? Are you asking about the talk, if it can be shared? If so, I'm not sure. I think that's up to Tommy. What attachment type would, it'll be on YouTube tomorrow. There you go. What attachment type would having a borderline parent most likely create? So a borderline personality is going to, it's interesting. It depends what your temperament is. So if you have a parent who has a deep fear of abandonment and goes from 0 to rage in 2.5 seconds, unpredictable, also may be have a lot of sexual partners, and also might have substance issues, very unpredictable. It depends what your temperament is, so how you're wired in general from birth. But that could go to you could either go anxiously attached, you could go, so they sometimes get it right, they sometimes don't. That could also be disorganizedly attached because they cause you so much fear because of their rage, and they're not able to regulate. Or you could be avoidant, that they're so self-involved that they aren't there for you at all. So it depends how that parent reacted to you as a child. What do you mean by the word intensity when you talk about intimacy versus intensity? So I'm really going to cover this in my next talk around love addiction. But what I mean is intimacy is quiet, it's sustainable. It's that connection that I talked about at the very beginning. There's a vulnerability, but there's also a sustainability. With anxiously attached and avoidantly attached and disorganizedly attached, we might get really, there might be a connection with someone and it's like trauma bonding. It is so intense. It is like, I want to spend every second with this person. They're absolutely it. And we all go through that in love phase. So that's always going to be, at the start of any relationship. But without that intensity, without that like first bam, like physical attraction and chemistry flowing, without that, there's a drop off. So the avoidantly attached person, they're actually going to feel like, I love love. What are you talking about? I'm not avoidantly attached. I fall in love all the time. But as soon as that in love stops, they start resenting the person's needs and wants. The anxiously attached person, as soon as that in love stops and that person, their partner starts, getting back to normal, it's not that constant dopamine rush, they don't feel like they need to see them every day, that's going to make the anxiously attached person super anxious because the anxiously attached person can never get close enough. Does that make sense? So that's intensity versus intimacy. Frequency of addiction as relating to attachment being said to be fluid and able to be reworked, frequency of addiction as more permanent. Yeah, so when we're in the frequency of addiction, we are going to be looking for that dopamine hit, that love addiction, that feeling of more compulsivity, the intensity, right? We're going to be mistaking the intensity for intimacy. Intimacy is the quiet knowing that someone is there, even when they aren't intensely all about you or needing you every second and things of that nature. So you guys, we're at 8 o'clock Central Time, 6 o'clock, all the different times. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed this and I hope you guys did too. And let me know your thoughts about what else you guys want me to talk about. And I'm happy to oblige and talk all things science, psychology, and spirituality and recovery. So please give me your feedback. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, so I can kind of change up and make things more interactive and easy for you guys to understand. And I look forward to hearing from you. If you want to follow me, I'm at Monroe Wellness. So MONROEWELLNESS. That's my handle for social media, and my website is www.monroewellness.com. So I hope you guys follow me. I hope you stay with me on this journey, and I will talk to you all next week. Bye.